Who is your best friend in the band? The bass player. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ian DeSouza, one of my best friends in the world. I love playing with him. He is a bass player, so look for the bass player in your band and become friends with him, because as the drummer, I think that's one of your best friends in the band is going to be the bass player. So I developed something that I called the 4 offenses of drummers. And I got this from hearing and learning, hearing from other musicians what bothered them about what the drummer did. And also myself in playing when I was, started playing with other people when I was a teenager, and from there, like what I did that really started to bother the other musicians that might have been really cool from a drummer's perspective, but from the bass player or the other instruments in the band really got in the way of the music. And not that I'm comparing myself to Michael Jordan or anything, but I remember reading his book, and at the beginning of his career, he was scoring all these points, but they weren't winning championships. And when he realized, like, pass the ball, man, even Michael can pass the ball, that's when they started winning the 6 championships as a team, when he started kind of going beyond just thinking of himself. So sometimes it's not about how fast your hands can go or all the stuff you can play, which is interesting because the more you learn on the drums, you kind of want to do it. Like, I can remember learning Stuart Copeland stuff and different things from Tony Williams and some of my favorite drummers, and going on the gig and wanting to do it and trying to do it, and sometimes making people, really mad. So the 4 offenses of drummers, as I call them, is space, dynamics, time, and listening. So myself as a drummer, if I don't leave any space for the other instruments, they're not really going to be able to talk too. It's like a one-way conversation. Time, so I have to have really solid time, not being pushing it too fast, but not dragging. And believe me, I've done both in bands, so I kind of know what it feels like to go too far one way and too far another way. And dynamics, I think on the drums we play way too loud most of the time. If you look at a drummer like Mark Juliana from New York City, he's an incredible drummer, and he burns and plays so intensely, but he plays at quiet dynamics as well as the louder dynamics. Space, time, dynamics, and of course listening, having a conversation with the other instruments, and where it is a conversation and not just a one-way kind of conversation for myself where I'm doing all the talking. And on the drums, we actually don't have to breathe. So you notice I can just play all day. Well, we have to breathe, but I don't have to stop my drumming to take a breath, much like, say, a trumpet or a wind instrument. So we have a tendency to, sometimes as drummers, to work those 4 offenses. So let's ask Ian, like, what do you look for in a drummer from a bass player's perspective?
Well, for me, personally, I think that you were talking about conversations, about musical conversations, and it's funny because that's what was, when you told me about this and you told me about the question, I thought about it for a second, and it's really about musical conversations that make drummers for me. Because there's the thing about playing the song, which is great, and it's beautiful, and there's so many people that do that so well, and they make it sound like the record. But really, from a performance standpoint, it's you want to have a conversation while you're playing the song. And the conversation is the people that are on stage with you. So you basically reinvent the tune every time you play. So it can be like the most hackneyed, whatever. And you play it, and you're mindful of the people you're on stage with, and you engage in conversations with them, musical ones. Rhythmic things, linear things that people pick up on and keep their ears open. Then you elevate something that otherwise might not be such a nice thing into a beautiful thing. So yeah, so it's musical conversations,
which I think keeps us in the present moment, because if we have one thing, as you know, Ian's in a band, Modus Factor, with me, which I'm honored to be able to play with him. And when we went into the studio, one thing we had an approach. It was our first album, and we went in with some pre-written stuff, some stuff we'd improvised, but we thought we could recreate some of those moments. Now, if you think of a conversation or like a joke or a great moment you had with a friend, it's really challenging to try to duplicate that magic, because it puts you in the past, or it puts you in the future, because you're thinking this has to turn out really good for later, or let's recreate that thing we did in the past. But we ended up throwing, and I have this photograph of a lot of the charts just on the floor. Yeah. And we said, let's just play from the heart and be in the present moment and be really authentic in our self-expression. And that was what made the album sound, we found who we were as a band doing that. So I think a lot of it, I'll add to what Ian said, is being in the present moment. And that really is a true conversation. If you've ever had a conversation with somebody, you sense they're always looking for a place to talk, or they're thinking about something or worried about something. So again, that's the past and the future. And I think we all do that as humans. But to constantly bring it back to the present moment and to really listen, that's, I think, what we want to strive for, is the bass player and drummer relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the foundation for everything else in the band. So, and that has to be a rock, but not like a, immovable rock, a rock that moves.
Yeah, like Bruce Lee said, be like water. And I think that's a lot of what I try to think of when I play with you guys and anybody else. It can't be like a rigid thing, and I think that's what we're trying to do, maybe a little in the studio. Like let's make sure we get it like this, and when we just threw all that away, and it wasn't a rigid thing, like you said, it's not an immovable thing. So that's awesome. Is there anything that drummers have done that kind of bothers you? And the four offenses of drummers, like we said, time, space, dynamics, listening, that probably covers it. But is there anything you can add that maybe some pet peeves of drummers that they play too loud, or what do you think?
Well, I think the number one pet peeve of any bass player with a drummer is the way the drummer looks at him when the bass player ain't offering any help to lift any of his gear. I think that's the number one pet peeve.
That's always the number one pet peeve.
Yeah, but other than that, I think I think a good a fairly safe kind of pet peeve thing is when the drummer doesn't want to engage in the in the conversation here, and it's like either they're so into just being like a drum machine, or
trying to force it, maybe.
Yeah, or they're so into just being like a freeform like jazz thing, whatever, and it's like no, but that's like saying there's only the only conversations we can have are about salami and about the jungles of Peru. And there's nothing
else.
So it's like, throw me a bone here so that we can can have this thing.
And like you said, with the freeform jazz too, sometimes it can go too far the other way, I guess. I've heard a lot of stand-up comedians say, like, the challenge, they're doing that night after night, the same jokes, but they want to make it sound fresh and be in the moment, but it's the same material. So like us, we might be playing the same tune.
Yeah.
And we can't just be, we're so in the moment that it becomes freeform jazz.
No.
We have to kind of stick to that, but also be in the moment. So I think there's a lot of comparisons to the stand-up comedian and music, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
I study them. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's I think humor is a really often forgotten part of music.
For sure.
It's
totally
like
agree with that.
yeah, I mean, it's like we've all gotten into this thing about, like, music is about love and it's like pretty tunes, or it's about sadness and lonely, or it's about partying and booty and whatever. But like humor is not really a part of that list, and it really should be.
We can take it too serious. Like, I don't know about you, I'm hitting stuff with wood, man. So I got to laugh at myself.
It doesn't get much more humorous than that, does it?
So sometimes if we are a little, it's like, man, you're hitting stuff with wood.
Yeah.
No one's going to die. Exactly, let's keep the humor. So let's do a little jam here. And this is a great thing you can do with your bass player friend, is just groove and learn to play together. It was one of the best things I learned to do in one of my first bands. Was like, I asked the bass player, hey man, do you want to get together on a day that we're not rehearsing and just go through the tunes ourselves? And I kind of heard the songs in a completely different way. So we'll do, now I know if you're just starting out, or you're just like, you've only been playing a short amount of time, it actually doesn't take much to be able to groove. And that was one of the great things I heard one of my favorite musicians, Victor Wooten, say. And check him out if you don't know who Victor Wooten is, one of my favorite human beings and musicians.
I realize that there's a lot that we can learn from music and apply to our lives. To be a good musician, you have to be a good listener. It doesn't matter how great I am as a bassist or any instrument. It doesn't matter how great I am. We can put 5 of the world's best musicians on this stage. But if we're great separate from each other, it's going to sound horrible. But if we listen to each other and play together, individually, we don't have to be as great. And it'll sound much better.
And he said, don't try hard, try easy. Don't try hard, try easy. It actually doesn't take that much to be able to make music. And if you think of the comparison of language to music, it doesn't take that much to be able to communicate, right? It just takes a few words. Maybe even, I've been to a lot of countries and sometimes I just know hello, thank you, where's the bathroom? Maybe that's all I know. Yeah. And it gets me by, keeps me fed, and I find the bathrooms and I'm good. Yeah. So we're just gonna jam, and I'm gonna play just some of the go-round grooves, and just very simply, and I'm gonna try to use all 4 of the, or not use any of the offenses, and then maybe we'll do a take 2, and I will on purposely do all of them. Okay, I'm gonna try to really bother Ian, and I hope he doesn't get too angry. So let's keep your sense of humor, man, okay? You might throw something at me. Let's do this.
Okay.
Yeah, man. In this segment, we could blink like a or some kind of red like cross.
Yeah.
Like, don't do this. Okay. Ready?
Yeah. On the same kind of vibe or different
No,
vibe?
it's gonna be bad.
Oh, okay.
It's bad. Okay, ready? So I tried to play loud. I didn't listen to you. I didn't leave any space. And no dynamics. So don't do that.